with our hands. We welcome you with our mouths. We welcome you with our hearts. We welcome you with our hands. We welcome you. Funga alafia, ashe, ashe. Funga alafia, ashe, ashe. Funga alafia, ashe, ashe. Funga alafia, ashe, ashe. With our hands, we welcome you. With our mouths, we welcome you. With our hearts, we welcome you. With our hands, we welcome you. Funga alafia, ashe, ashe. Funga alafia, ashe, ashe. Funga alafia, ashe, ashe. Funga alafia, ashe, ashe.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. straight from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stay true to our God, true to our God. Thank you, Lord, true to our God, true to our native land.
Africa, the second largest continent in the world. Africa, home to over 1 billion people who speak over 1,500 different languages in 54 sovereign countries. Africa, where world civilization began. People of African descent exist in every corner of the earth. Most of us understand that the dispersal of Africans throughout the Americas, Europe, and Asia was through the slave trade. But did you know that since the beginning of time, Africans existed in greatness? Creating, designing, and reigning, long before the European colonial interference. We existed, not just as servants or slaves, but as princes, kings, and queens.
Tonight, we travel back in time. While many of these stories may be fictional, the characters definitely are not. Welcome to When We Were Kings.
I am an African, not because I was born there, but because my heart beats with Africa's. I am an African, not because my skin is black, but because my mind is engaged with Africans. I am an African, not because I live on the soil, but because my soul is at home in Africa. When Africa weeps for children, my cheeks are stained with tears. Africa oars and victors, my head is bowed in defense. When Africa owns a victim, my hands are joined in prayer. When Africa celebrates a triumph, my feet are lined with dancing. I'm an African, from blue skies take my breath away, and my hope for the future is bright. I'm an African, from people greet me as family, and teach me the meaning of community. I'm an African, for wellness quenches my spirit, and bring me closer to the source of life. When the music of Africa beats in the wind, my blood pulses to a rhythm, and I become the essence of sound. When the clouds of Africa drinking its rainbow, and I become the prince of nature. When the stories of Africa echo in the fire, my feet walk in its pathways, and I become the footprints of history. I am an African, not she was of our birth, and naked of ancient wisdom. I am an African, cause she lives in the world's shadow, and born with luminosity. I am an African, cause she is the land of tomorrow, and I recognize her gifts are sacred. falsely taught us that the first humans looked like Europeans. However, in fact, the Garden of Eden was land bordering in Egypt, Ethiopia, and Mesopotamia.
Scripture tells us that from the Garden of Eden flowed four rivers. The name of the first is Pison. It winds to the eternal land of Havilah, Saudi Arabia, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good. Aromatic resin and onyx are also there.
The name of the second river is called the Gihon. It winds the entire land of Cush, which most agreed is the land of Ethiopia. The name of the third river is called the Tigris. It runs along the east side of Ashur. And the name of the fourth river is called the Euphrates. From the very beginning, human beings were people of color from the continent of Africa.
The Creation by James Weldon Johnson. And God stepped out on space, and he walked around and said,
I'm lonely. I will make me a world.
And as far as the eye of God could see, darkness covered everything, blacker than 100 midnights down in the cypress swamp. And God smiled, and the light broke. The darkness rolled on one side, the light shining on the other. And God said,
That's good.
Then God reached out and took the light in his hands, and God rolled the light around in his hands until he made the sun.
And he set that sun blazing in the heavens, and the light that was left from making the sun, God gathered it up in a shining ball and flung it against the darkness, spangling the night with the moon and the stars. Then down between the darkness and the light, he hurled the world, and God said,
That's good.
Then God himself stepped out, and the sun was on his right hand, and the moon was on his left. The stars just clustered about his head, and the moon was on his left.
And God walked, and where he trod his footsteps hollowed the valleys out and bulged the mountains up. And God stopped, and he looked at his world, that it was hot and barren. So God stepped out in the edge of the world, and he spat out the seven seas.
He batted his eyes, and the lightnings flashed. He clapped his hands, and the thunders rolled. The waters above the earth came down, including waters came down.
And the green grass sprouted, the little round flowers blossomed. The pine tree put his finger to the sky, and the oak spread out his arms.
Then God walked around, the lakes covered down, and they held of the ground, and the rivers ran down to the sea. Then God smiled again, and the rainbow appeared. It curled itself around his shoulders. Then God raised his arm and waved his hand and over the sea and over the land. Then God said,
Bring forth! Bring forth!
and quicker than God could drop his hand, fishes and fowls and beasts and birds swam the rivers and the seas, roamed the forests and the woods, and put the air with their wings, and God said,
That's good.
God walked around and he had made. He looked at his sun and he looked at his moon.
And he looked at his little stars, and he looked on his world with all its living things, and God said,
I'm lonely still.
And God sat down on the side of a hill where he could think. By a deep, wide river he sat down.
With his head in his hands, God thought and thought till he thought,
And I will make me a man.
Up from the bed of the river God scooped the clay, and by the bank of the river he kneaded him down. And the great God Almighty who lit the sun and fixed it in the sky, who flung the stars to the most far corner of the night, who rounded the earth in the middle of his hands. This great God, like a mommy bending over a baby, kneeled down in the dust, twirling over a lump of clay till he shaped it in his own image. Then into it he blew the breath of life, and man became a living soul.
Amen. Amen.
I have seen, I have heard that you are good, that you are faithful, and I know that is true. My heart will always worship you. Oh, I have seen, Lord, I have heard how you transform hopeless situations, and I know you can do it again. Jehovah, what a mighty God you are. Jehovah Cheneke, Eligwa Yuanasi, Idima, Ijebube, Olu Akagina Agosi na Chimo, Imarama, Oh, Ijebube, the joy within my soul. Jesus, I will always boast of you. I bring my heart of worship and bow to you, Jehovah.
Architecture.
The great temples of ancient Egypt continue to fascinate and amaze people in the modern day. The sheer size of sculptured structures like the Great Pyramid at Giza are literally awe-inspiring and naturally encourage questions regarding how they were built.
Agriculture. Life in Egypt was centered on the River Nile. Farmers developed long irrigation methods which control the flow of water so as to ensure that crop yields were maintained throughout seasons, whether dry or rainy.
Math. Egypt had some mathematical achievements which made it possible for their education to increase tremendously. By the year 2700 BC, Egyptians had developed the base of 10 enumerations. By the year 1300 BC, Egyptians managed to develop two algebraic equations. Their innovation in mathematics gave them a cutting edge from the rest of the world.
Medicine. The oldest known surgical book on trauma was developed in Egypt in 1600 BC. This document describes 48 cases of injuries, fractures, wounds, dislocations, wounds, and tumors. It presents a rational and scientific approach to medicine that was used in ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptian doctors gained the skills and capability of stitching wounds, repairing broken bones, and amputating affected limbs. They managed to bandage body cuts by the use of raw meat and linen which were soaked in honey.
Astronomy was important to the ancient Egyptians on two levels, the spiritual and the practical. The stars told the story of the God's accomplishment and trials, but also indicated the patterns of times and seasons.
Astronomy. The stars could tell one when it was going to rain, when it was nearing time to plant or harvest crops, and even the best times for making important decisions such as building a home or a temple or starting a business venture.
Astronomy. The astronomical observation led to astrological interpretation. Strictly astronomical examinations of the night skies were recorded in mathematical calculation, measuring weeks, months, and years.
Invented a number of items which one simply takes for granted in the modern day. Paper and ink, cosmetics, toothbrush, and toothpaste, even the ancestors of the modern breath mint were all invented by Egyptians.
The sun sat died in bed and brought forth light. The sciences were sucklings at thy breast.
All the world was young and pregnant night. Thy slaves toiled at thy monumental best.
Thou ancient treasure land, thou modern prize, new people marveled at thy pyramids.
Honor and glory, arrogance and fame, they went, the darkness swallowed thee again.
The years roll on through things. The years roll on. Thy things to vain on immobile lids. Proud of
Power, yet all things in vain, the Hebrews humbled them at Pharaoh's name.
Thou art the harlot, now thy time is done, of all the mighty nations of the sun.
Ethiopia, the oldest independent country in sub-Saharan Africa. The earliest evidence of Ethiopian history was around 1000 BC when the Queen of Sheba visited King Solomon. The fullest and most significant version of the legend appears in the Glory of the Kings, the Ethiopian national saga.
Based on the Gospel of Matthew and Luke, The queen of the south is claimed to be the queen of Ethiopia. In those times, King Solomon sought merchants from all over the world in order to buy materials for the building of the temple.
Among them was Tamar, great merchant of Queen Makeda of Ethiopia. Having returned to Ethiopia, Tamar told the queen of all the wonderful things he had seen in Jerusalem, and of Solomon's wisdom and generosity, whereupon she decided to visit Solomon. She was warmly welcomed, given a palace for dwelling, and received great gifts every day.
Solomon and Makeda spoke with great wisdom, and instructed by him, she converted to Judaism. Before she left, there was a great feast in the king's palace.
Makeda is said to have borne a child from King Solomon, Menelik I. The Ethiopian dynasty claims descent from King Solomon to this present day.
Mene, what's wrong, my child?
Nothing, Mother, nothing.
How can you say nothing when you are crying, my child? Why do you ask this of me? Did someone say you had no father? Who said that? You know that is pure foolish talk, son. Your father is the king of a great nation, many miles away from here. Well, he's not here because he's a very important man with many other children. 12 years ago, I heard of a kingdom to the north that was being ruled by a leader who was said to be the wisest man on earth. Your grandfather and I traveled along with our servants and many gifts to test this man with questions. We had hoped to gain some knowledge to benefit our kingdom. What was to be a stay of a few months ended up being a stay of 2 years. During this time, I was so impressed with Solomon's knowledge and kindness that I fell in love. This man is your father, and in a few years, when you are a bit older, we will both travel down to visit him. He is a very good man. You can't come visit us here because he's a very important man. But one thing I learned from Solomon was to believe in our Heavenly Father, the God we pray to every night. He too is a good father, and cares for us and our kingdom. You may not be able to see him, sweetheart, but you can feel him here. Oh, I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think he's like, but I've heard tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and he tells me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. He's a good father. It's who he is. It's who he is. It's who he is, and you are loved by him. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. Oh, and I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I've heard a tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and it tells me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. He's a good father. It's who he is. It's who he is. It's who he is. And you are loved by him. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. Because he is perfect in all of his ways. Oh, he's perfect in all of his ways. Because he is perfect in all of his ways. It's who he is. Because he's a good father. It's who he is. It's who he is. It's who he is. And you are loved by him. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. dark, he seems a good, good father.
The famous Hannibal was a general from the present-day African country of Tunisia. He is considered to be one of the greatest military commanders in history. He lived during a period when the Roman Republic was establishing their supremacy.
His most famous achievements was at the outbreak of the Second Punic War. He marched an army which included war elephants through Spain, over the Alps, into Italy.
He distinguished himself for his abilities to determine his and his opponents' respective strengths and weaknesses and to plan battles accordingly.
I am Hannibal, the greatest general to have ever lived. Conceited of me? Conceited of me? Yes. So you think, so I know. My father, Hamilcar Barca, the great and undefeated hero from the First Punic War. The others thought to be my father's successor, but none with my skill. He did a good job preparing me, my father. I speak Greek, Latin, as well as some other languages that have served me well as a soldier. The life of a soldier is one that is very precious to me. I eat with my men, sleep on the ground with them. What they endure, I endure. That is why they have the utmost loyalty. Some even worked for free when I had not the funds to pay them. It has been my practice to use new and different ideas in battle. Once, while fighting at sea, I had my men throw live snakes on an enemy ship. The snakes frightened the enemy so badly that they surrendered. Some thought my plan to attack Rome from the west was foolhardy, since no army could cross the mighty. Some thought my plan to attack Rome from the west was foolhardy, but it has always been my practice to use my enemy's strengths against them. Who could stand against the mighty Romans? They had nerve to send a delegation to Carthage to demand that I be surrendered to them? Ha! They expected I would attack by sea, since no army could cross the mighty Alps. They wanted an easy victory, or so they thought. My plan was to defeat Romans in battle and prove to the world that they are fallible. It was my hope to gain support from the Gallic tribes and liberate the oppressed people of Italy. I decided to bring my war elephants with me. No one thought it was possible. I lost most of my elephants to the cold of the mountains, but we did make it over and cross the Alps. I would have succeeded in conquering the Romans if the Carthaginian leaders had sent reinforcements to the right place. They sent them to defend silver mines instead of Italy, where I needed them. But you should have seen those elephants coming out of the mountains. 'Twas a sight to behold. I would not be taken. I would not give in. So I took my own life.
Good listener, please lend your ear to share my history. Before I take the poison drink, I'll tell you my story. They're coming even now to take the city that we love and hope that's often lost. And so's my tale I'll tell you of. When Carthage took upon himself to find by light of day a general with your luck, Hannibal did say. He prepared to cross the mountains, but was not the only way, but first to cross the river where great Hannibal did say.
The river Rome rose up and warned, don't cross my waters great. No way to cross, then all was lost. Great Hannibal did say.
Then at once did Hannibal with crossbow-head again take down those trees to make a raft. Great Hannibal did say.
Over the waters blue they went, lined up in an array, and out to Rome and battle great good Hannibal did say.
Do Due north he found an obstacle that willed to give him way. The northern tribes with battle cries, great Hannibal did slay.
The biggest problem now was here across the mountain stray. Great danger now we face, my men, great Hannibal did say. Across the mountains known, did think that they would last a day. Just one more hill or mountaintop, great Hannibal would say.
The crew were really lost and torn, that made them curse today. But we're almost there, you see, great Hannibal did say.
Soon enough the walls of Rome rose up as if to say, who ventures here with war and mud, come greet us at our gates.
But in the Roman city, there Scipio here to say, no one can beat us, no one can, great Hannibal did say.
At Rome's great gates for 15 years, he waited patiently. We can't stay here for food, this dear great Hannibal did say.
So we turned back to Carthage's gates, but met along the way Scipio and his army, great Hannibal could not slay.
And all was done, his quest was lost, and Rome would leave too great a treaty signed, so punishing that Carthage lost its gate.
And Hannibal, the general that lost the city too, was forced to go to land beyond and help as best he could.
The kingdom of Axum was an ancient kingdom located on what is now the African countries of Ethiopia and Eritrea. The trading empire exists between 1009 AD and 900 AD. One of its greatest kings was King Ezana. He was the first Axum king to totally embrace Christianity.
But beyond declaring Christianity, King Uzziah had inherited to succeeding generations many remarkable accomplishments. According to Jonas, Uzziah had made his kingdom one of the four superpowers of that time. It was strong, economically, physically, and militarily in Uzziah's rule.
At a young age, his fathers chosen a Syrian monk as his tutor, and this afforded ample for the child to be molded into Christian norms, growing up learning religious and moral lessons. King Azana had been attracted to Christian faith and obliged to be baptized.
After being baptized, the king had changed his name to Abraha, meaning light bearer. Thus, after he took upon his father's throne, he declared Christianity a state religion of his kingdom. Since then, King Azana was the first king in Africa to accept Christianity and made his kingdom the first Christian kingdom in the continent.
He minted the coins with the sign of a cross on them to spread his religion. Neighboring trading partners, due to this, the coins are noticed as the first coins to be found.
Many question why I should promote the European faith throughout my kingdom, turning my back on centuries of history of native belief. As you know, I do understand. But however, how our kingdom and surrounding areas have always welcomed the belief of others. As you know, through Menelik, many of our people grew up in the Jewish faith, while others embraced that of Islam. This is not new, but what was different for me was how the love of Christ gave me a peace that no other God could provide. My father, too, was king, but unfortunately, he died while I was yet a child. Many of the elders tried to guide me in their ways, but my mother, who was regent, left it up to me to choose. My tutor, Frumentius, taught me to pattern my life in the ways of love rather than hate, seek justice rather than power, and pattern my life after the greatest man to walk this earth, Jesus Christ. Christianity was the message that I would spread to my kingdom, and in return, he has granted me all the desires of my heart. For this, I can never repay all that he has done for me. He's done so much for me, I cannot tell it all. If I had 10,000 tongues, still wouldn't be enough. Really, when you hear completely. Chukumarombe mo, isi ikendule, we sing Nara. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. Nara, Nara. Nara, 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 Nara. We sing Nara, Nara. He's done so much for me, I cannot tell it all. If I had 10,000 tongues, it still wouldn't be enough. When you heal completely. Chukumarombe mo, isi ikendule, we sing. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. Now regular. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. Nara, Nara. Nara, Nara.
The Mali Empire was an empire in West Africa from 1230 to 1670. It was founded by Sundiata Keita and became known for the wealth of its rulers. It was the largest empire in West Africa and profoundly influenced the culture of West Africa through the spread of its language, laws, and customs.
One of Mali's most important kings was Musa Keita I. Under his rule, Mali became one of the wealthiest countries in the world. From their gold and salt production, agriculture, and imperialistic nature and dynamic trade location, the kingdom flourished.
He enriched the great trading city of Timbuktu, established the libraries and Islamic universities. By the end of Mansa Musa's reign, the Sankore University was capable of housing 25,000 students and had one of the largest libraries in the world, with nearly 1 million manuscripts.
Mansa Musa was a devout Muslim, and in the year of 1324, he made his pilgrimage to Mecca. He has said to included 60,000 men, all wearing Persian silk. Each of his 12,000 slaves carried gold bars and gold staffs. He provided everything his men needed on the pilgrimage and gave gold to the poor he met along his route.
It was reported that he built a mosque every Friday. Islam was a central tenet in the life of Mansa Musa, and he dedicated his devotion for God and his religion.
I am Mansa Musa. Who am I, you may ask of me? So many ignorant of our history. Grandpa Sundiata never knew he would inspire, although he was founder of the Mali Empire, first of the Mandinka line to be called Mansa as king. Emperor the name does mean, the heralds would soon sing. From this powerful line of men unto the scene I came, never knowing I would change the world. I just lived up to my name. Like those before me, I will follow the teachings of Allah and clearly spread his message from Egypt to Accra. My pilgrimage to Mecca will not be as those before. Every day, all the world will know of him and what Islam had in store. And soon, tenets of Islam will be spread throughout the earth. Using gold and salt as currency, Timbuktu became my greatest victory. Investing Mali's resources in faith and education, establishing a library the best in all the nation. Who am I, you may ask of me? So many ignorant of our history. I am he who gives honor and glory to the Most High. I am he who built the great mosque and on many who relied. I am he whose fame and fortune Egypt and Rome was soon to hear. I am he whose name alone made men quake and tremble in fear. I am Mansa Musa.
Jehovah, Tembera Jehovah, Tembera Jehovah, Tembera, Tembera Jehovah, Tembera Jehovah, Tembera Jehovah, Tembera Jehovah, oh ilele. Dance to the Lord. Dance to the Lord. Dance to the Lord. Dance to the Lord. Ilelele, ilelele. Ilelele, ilelele.
Zimbabwe, we say uka uka. It means over there, over there. That is where the blessings are. Are you ready to say it with me? Uka uka uka. 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 Uka uka uka.
Now in Zimbabwe, we say Rikita Demoni, which means cast the demons. Are you ready to cast the demons? Rikitamo Demo. 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 Rikitamo Demo.
Dance to the Lord. Dance to the Lord. Dance to the Lord. Oh, ilele, ilele. Oh, ilele, ilele. Dance to the Lord. Dance to the Lord. Dance to the Lord. Dance to the Lord.
At the time of the first arrival of the Portuguese to the Kingdom of Congo capital in 1491, Mavenza of Congo was in his 30s, was heir to the throne. He took the name Alfonso after his father decided to convert to Christianity.
He studied with Portuguese priests and advisors for 10 years in the kingdom's capital. Letters written by priests to the King of Portugal paint Alfonso as an enthusiastic and scholarly convert to Christianity.
Around 1495, the men in Congo denounced Christianity, and Alfonso welcomed the priests into his Nsundi province. To the displeasure of many in the realm, he had traditional art objects that might offend Portuguese sensibilities destroyed.
Much is known about the reign of Alfonso through his letters to the Portuguese kings. These letters offered information on the agriculture and misbehavior of some Portugal officials. Many of these disagreements were on the Congo slave trade.
This relationship came to a head during the latter half of the 1520s, when Congo slave trade was at its peak, a direct result of Portuguese traders violating the law of Alfonso I concerning who could and who could not be sold as a slave. The Portuguese regarded the slave trade as nothing more than typical commerce.
Dearest, whatever is the matter? King Manuel's men are downstairs talking to your men.
Yes, Mpanzi, this is what I am. They have finally backed me into a corner. For the years we have been at each other over these slaves. I've sent them all our prisoners of war, but that was not enough. Would they have me send my neighbor's children for profit? That is not the way of Christ.
Why can't you refuse, Alfonso? Just say no, or send help from the church.
Mpanzi, do not be foolish. You know that much of our trade is linked with King Manuel of Portugal. The weapons we have are from them, and the ones they do are far superior. We will be destroyed if the king does not hear my side. I forbade my men to send our enemies to them, but they betrayed me for gold from Portugal.
What can you know, my dear? The deal has been done.
I do not know. That is why I am so frustrated. How will God forgive me of this?
He knows it is not your fault. You did what you thought was best for your kingdom and for your family.
That is our last hope. Pray that he will not lay this sin at my feet, and that he will stand against Portugal for us.
Alfonso let the situation continue for as long as it did, as an attempt not to be overly rude to the Portuguese, as he had been attempting to resolve the situation diplomatically through letter to Vatican as well as to Portugal.
The Portuguese showed clear disdain to the slave economics of the Congo. They attempted to assassinate Alfonso in 1540. This attempt resulted in failure.
Who can stand against the Lord? No one can, no one will.
Who can stand against the King? No one can, no one will.
Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him.
Who can stand? Nobody can. No one will.
Who can stand? Nobody can. No one will. Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. 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 So put our trust in You. So we put our hope in You. Provider, I find my victory. Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. Victory belongs to Jesus. No matter what it looks like it. Victory belongs to Him. No matter what it feels like it. Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. Oh, victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him. Victory belongs to Jesus. Victory belongs to Him.
Ashanti Wa was born October 17, 1840, and she died October 17, 1921. She was Queen Mother of Ejisu in the Ashanti Empire, now part of modern-day Ghana. In 1900, she led the War of the Golden Stool against British colonialism.
During her brother's reign, Ya Asantewaa saw the Ashanti Confederacy go through a series of events that threatened its future, including the Civil War. When her brother died in 1894, Ya Asantewaa used her rights as Queen Mother to nominate her own grandson as king.
In 1896, the British government exiled the Ashanti king and demanded the golden stool, the symbol of the Ashanti nation. This request led to a secret meeting in Kumasi with the remaining members of the Ashanti government to discuss the returning of their king.
I cannot believe what I am hearing. Brother, you too refuse to fight?
Yeah, you do not understand. These things take time. We must negotiate.
Brother, the time for negotiation is gone. Is there no one to fight for the return of our king? Of what are you afraid?
Perhaps God wants us to be cautious. This could be the end of our kingdom.
Elders, in the brave days of Osei Tutu, our chiefs would have never sat down to see their king taken without fighting a shot. He will give us a victory. If you, the men of Ashanti, will not go forward, then we will. I shall call upon my fellow women, and we will fight the white men until the last one falls on the battlefield. It's the same God who is there for you in the midnight hour. It's the same God who is able to wipe your tears away. It's the same God who is there in times of lack and want. It's the same God, Jehovah, my great provider. Tell me why you're giving up on God. Tell me why you're giving up on Him. Tell me why you're giving up on God. Hold on, change is on the way. Ebezina, Chukwu Nanso, Okinibu Sobugi, Imana Dia Digide. No anamo, Chideseke, Hichayagie, Chukwadi Atwasi, Ogadirigima. Don't you cry, change is here. Weeping indoors for one night. Joy's gonna come in the morning. You don't have to cry no more. Hold God by His word. He's gonna do what He says. Lift your hands and give Him praise. Whoa, 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 Ebezina, Chukwu Nanso, Okinibu Sobugi, Imana Dia Digide, Ranamo, Chideseke, Hichayagie, Chukwadi Atwasi, Ebezina, Chukwu Nanso, Okinibu Sobugi, Imana Dia Digide, Ranamo, Chideseke, Hichayagie, Chukwadi Atwasi, Ogadirigima. I know you've been crying, I understand. I know you're wounded, but it's okay. I know you've been broken, but I'm here. Believe in me, you will overcome. Yesterday will be your story. I'm the God of all flesh. Nothing is too hard for me to do, yes. Don't you forget, I'm on the sea. Don't you forget now. Don't you forget, I'm into God and you my hold on, it's gonna be over. You will overcome today. Wipe your eyes and give Him all the praise. Chukwu Nanso, Okinibu Sobugi, Imana Dia Digide.
Nelson Mandela was a political leader and anti-apartheid revolutionary. He was the country's first black head of state in a fully elected representative democratic election.
Mandela was born to a royal family in British South Africa. As a lawyer in Johannesburg, he became involved in anti-colonial and African nationalist politics. After the National Party's white-only government established apartheid, a system of racial segregation that privileged whites, he committed himself to its overthrow.
Although initially committed to nonviolent protests, he soon led a sabotage campaign against the government. He was arrested and imprisoned in 1962 and was placed on trial in Rivonia, South Africa.
His hearing began in October, but disrupted proceedings by wearing a corrosive animal skin and refusing to call any witnesses, and turning his plea of mitigation into political speech.
The government often answers its critics by saying that Africans in South Africa are economically better off than the inhabitants of other countries in Africa. I do not know whether this statement is true, but even if it is true, as far as the African people are concerned, it is irrelevant. Our complaint is not that we are poor by comparison with the people in other countries in Africa, but that we are poor by comparison with the white people in our own country, and that we are prevented by legislation from altering this imbalance.
The lack of humanity experienced by Africans is a direct result of policy of white supremacy. White supremacy implies black inferiority. Legislation designed to preserve white supremacy entrenches this notion. Menial tasks in South Africa are invariably performed by Africans. Whenever anything has to be carried or cleaned, the white man will look for an African to do it for him, whether he is employed by him or not. Because of this sort of attitude, whites tend to regard Africans as separate breeds. They do not look upon them as people with families of their own. They do not realize that they have emotions, that they fall in love like white people do, that they want to be able to be with their wives and children like white people want to be with theirs, that they want to be able to earn enough money to support and to support their families properly, to feed them and to clothe them, and to send them to school. But what houseboy, garden boy, or laborer can ever hope to do this?
We want equal political rights because without them, our disabilities will be permanent. I know this sounds revolutionary to the whites in this country because most of the voters will be African. This makes the white man fear democracy. During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to the struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination. I have fought against black domination. Excuse me. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony. This is an ideal for which I am prepared to hope for, this is an ideal for which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
3 weeks later, the judge announced his verdict. Nelson Mandela had been found the leading role for waging guerrilla war intended to culminate in full-scale revolt against the government of South Africa.
Nelson Mandela, who had all decided that he would not appeal if sentenced to death, broke into a smile and gave a thumbs up to his supporters. He and his co-defendants were rushed into a van.
As they drove off to what for each would be more than 2 decades of imprisonment, the crowd in the streets outside of the courthouse shouted, Kosa Sika Lila Africa. Mandela answered by shaking his clenched fist through the bars of the van's window.
Nelson Mandela spent the next 18 years in a prison on Robben Island just off Cape Town. He worked in a lime quarry and was allowed 1 letter and 1 visitor every 6 months.
President P.W. Botha offered Mandela a deal: renounce violence and be freed. Mandela refused the offer. Only a free man can sign into contracts. A prisoner cannot negotiate, he said.
In November of 1895, the National Party government entered into secret negotiations for Mandela for what it was hoped might be an eventual transition to a multiracial government. In February 1990, President F.W. de Klerk announced the release of Nelson Mandela.
The next year, Mandela was elected president of the ANC. In April 1994, South Africans of all races went to the polls. The ANC won 62% of the vote. On May 10th, Nelson Mandela took the oath of office as the first Black president of South Africa.
Although we have been separated by time and geography, our hearts will always be tied to our motherland, Africa. Her failures were our failures, and her successes were our successes.
The history of our land and people must be told and retold for future generations. We are people of African origin, living and existing outside of the continent. We are permanently and perpetually connected to the land of our fathers. We are Africa.
My God is good, oh.
Hey, my God is good, oh.
Hey, my God is good, oh.
Hey, my God is good, oh.
In the morning, when I wake up, I will sing my praise unto you, my Lord. And I will shout and dance to you. You have been my help.
help from now till ever. Hey, my God is good. Oh. Hey, my God is good. Oh. In the morning when I wake up, and I will sing my praise unto you, my Lord. I will shout and dance to you, for you have been my help from now till ever. Hey, my God is good. Oh. Hey, my God is good. Oh. Everything now double, double. Oh. Anointing double, double. Oh. Our double, double. Oh. Our wisdom double, double. Oh. House double, double. Oh. Your money double, double. Anointing double, double. Your business double, double. And my God is good. And my God is good. Yes, the final say. Who has the final say? Who has the final say? Who has the final say? The final say. Who has the final say? the final say? Who has the final say?
I'm so proud of them. I will have to ask Miss Marchani that, but Miss Marchani, can they have a dress down day? Please, thank you. Yeah.